Three invoicing decisions determine how fast money lands in your account on every engagement that is not on a recurring subscription: where the invoice lives, what payment methods it accepts, what the terms are. Get all three right, and average time to payment drops to under a week on most invoices. Get one wrong, and you spend hours on follow-up that the friction itself caused. The mechanics are mundane, and the payoff is durable. Three decisions per invoice, each independent of the others. Where the invoice lives is a tooling question. What payment methods it accepts is a friction question. What the terms are is a business context question that depends on the engagement type. Get all three right, and the time to payment compresses to under 7 days on most coaching engagements. Get one wrong, typically the click to pay link or the net terms, and you create the kind of friction that turns a clean invoice into 3 follow-up emails and a phone call. None of the decisions is hard. Skipping any of them is what produces the cost. 3 places an invoice can live, and the right answer is the one with the fewest manual steps. Bookkeeping software, QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Xero, has invoicing built in, and payments link directly to the reconciliation work in Module 7, because the same tool owns both. Coaching platform Invoicing, if you went bundle in Unit 8.2, sits inside the client record alongside session notes and contracts. Stripe's standalone invoice feature is the simplest path if Stripe is your processor and your books live elsewhere. The wrong choice creates manual reconciliation work every single month. Pick the option that closes the loop from invoice created to revenue recorded with the least typing. Click to pay is the friction reduction lever that does the most work for the smallest amount of effort. A direct payment link attached to every invoice. The client clicks, enters card or bank details once, the charge runs, the invoice marks paid in your books automatically. The alternative is sending an invoice that reads, "Please wire to this account," or "Please mail a check," which costs you 3 to 7 days of float for no good reason and forces the client to look up wire instructions they do not have. Every invoice gets the link. No exceptions for older clients, no exceptions for corporate clients. They all click on links these days, even the CFOs. Net terms vary by engagement context, and the wrong terms create avoidable friction. Net 7 or Net 15 is the coaching norm for session-based invoicing of individual clients. They expect to pay within a week or two, and the short window keeps the engagement money current. Net 30 is the working standard for B2B corporate contracts, where the buyer pays on a monthly AP cycle. Net 30 or Net 45 may be the actual expectation for L&D buyers, EAPs, and large sponsors whose finance teams run on quarterly batches. Know which context the invoice sits in before you write the terms. Picking Net 7 for a corporate buyer with a monthly AP cycle produces friction the buyer cannot resolve. Deposit first changes the economics of package engagements and reduces late payment risk. 25 to 50% of the engagement fee invoiced at contract signing. Balance at a defined milestone or session count later in the engagement. Cuts the exposure if a client stops responding after session 3. Cleanse the cash flow because part of the work is paid before it starts. The policy design, what percentage, what milestone, is Unit 8.6 work and pairs directly with the cancellation policy you draft there. For now, configure your invoicing tool to support the deposit plus balance pattern so you are ready to apply it when the policy is finalized. Auto charge mode versus invoice-and-wait mode is a per engagement type decision, not a uniform policy. Retainer clients with a stored payment method run on auto charge. The card charges on the billing date. No invoice goes out at all. Lowest possible friction. Project-based work and corporate engagements run on Invoice-and-Wait with net 15 or net 30. The buyer needs the invoice in their system to route through their AP cycle, and auto charge is structurally wrong for that flow. Choose the mode per engagement at the contracting stage, not uniformly. Coaches who default everything to Invoice-and-Wait leave retainer money on the table for 15 days every month. Every invoice carries 6 brand basics, and missing any of them creates follow-up. Entity name that matches the EN. EN itself, or the last 4 digits if the invoice is going to an individual client and you prefer privacy. Invoice number that runs sequentially with no gaps. Line item descriptions written in plain language with no jargon and no acronyms. Your client should not need to ask what service the invoice covers. Payment due date as an explicit calendar date, not net 15 in the corner that forces the buyer to do arithmetic. Click to pay link front and center. Any one of these missing means the buyer emails you back asking for clarification before they can pay. Draft a test invoice this afternoon for a hypothetical $500 engagement. Use whichever option you picked for where invoices live. Single line item, due date 15 days out, click to pay link attached. Send it to yourself at a personal email address and time how long it takes you to pay it. If the payment takes more than 2 minutes from clicking the link to seeing the confirmation, you have a friction problem to solve before the next invoice goes to a real client. 2 minutes is the bar. Anything longer is a configuration issue, and the configuration is easier to fix on a test invoice than on a live one with a client copied.